Hi, Louise Opprud, and welcome to this broadcast. I am so honored that you would come because I know that you're one of Scandinavian's top keynote speakers. You're usually always traveling around talking about technology, neuroscience, the future of work. You're a very sought after keynote speaker. So it's such an honor that we could sit here for a little while and I could get you to talk to my audience about what you see as trends emerging in this fantastic crisis time. So welcome, Louise.
Thank you so much. I'm delighted. What a good opportunity to be talking about all of this.
Yes. And so my question today is, we all know that we're in a crisis. Yes, check. Half of the world is stuck at home right now. So that's not so difficult to spot. But what I am curious about is how can we transform this crisis into a quantum leap? And what are your thoughts when I ask you that question?
Well, the first that I was thinking about when you posed me this idea was a brilliant quote by Thomas Friedman, the guy who covers the tech radar for the New York Times. And he said once in this book that he wrote called Thank You for Being Late, he said, when you press the pause button on a machine, it stops. But when you press the pause button on a human being, they start. They start to rethink where they are, they start to become inspired, and they start to crave learning. And I thought that there was this delightful balance in between these two, because on one hand side, we're seeing right now that the machine has stopped completely. The economy has frozen. Lots of companies have completely frozen into this bubble that this crises are putting on all of us. On the other hand side, we as humans, for some of us, we have the opportunity to use this pause. I really think for all of us that we do, but of course, some of us have more time. Like, for instance, for me, all of my travels have been frozen. All of my keynotes have been frozen. So lots of the events and engagement that I was supposed to be doing and working with around the world right now has been postponed. So how can we use this pause to really be thinking about the 20s as a whole, be thinking about what we want to be learning, what we want to be taking out of this crisis, and how we can actually use it in a very constructive way. So that was kind of my entry into this. So I do a couple of different projects. On one hand side, I work with technology and the mindset that we should be taking on to ensure that we stay strong and relevant in the 20s. What are the ways of thinking and learning and innovating that we can learn from some of the digital pioneers around the world? And on the other hand side, I run a production company. I have a distillery. And in the distillery, we have, like other great distilleries and perfume makers, we have pivoted our setup to be producing sanitizers. But as we did this, it's not an easy process. It takes quite a lot of time, and it takes quite a lot of hanging on the phone with the tax authorities and with, I think we've been in touch with so far 4 different authorities to be approving whatever we needed to be dealing with these chemicals that goes into sanitizers that we didn't have. It took a lot to be setting up a new production line, to be bringing in all of the new packaging, setting up new machinery, everything in a production line that is very physical and not abstract in any given way, to be producing a new product within 48 hours. But we did so because the entire team, they rose to the challenge. They really wanted us to be able to, on one hand side, create a very relevant product, and to see that we could gear ourselves to still fit into a very different business context to be able to stay relevant. And I think there's been so many great cases of, we were just talking just before we started recording about hospitals that are working in new ways, car manufacturers that are producing equipment for the entire industry that is in need for it right now, ASICs that are not producing shoes, but that are producing things that you can be covering your mouth with, obviously, etc., etc., etc. So there's lots of pivoting going on within the industry that is really inspiring, because this extreme flexibility, that is a core strength that we need for the 2020s. That is one of the most sought after features of any given company that will succeed in being able to do this pivot. Like before, we were talking about technological disruption, and I think for all of us, this has been the true disruption. Now we really felt it, what it was like when the entire world stopped at once. And these disruptions within technology, we know that we will see many, many more of them within each and every industry that is impacted by the digital era and within new technologies. So there we have to train this ability to be pivoting and to be radical creative, and really have this ability to see crises as an opportunity to find new strengths. Like Winston Churchill, he said, never waste a good crisis. So how can we not waste this crisis? What can we learn from it? How can we gear ourselves for entire new things? And then on the other hand side, when just yesterday I was talking with the guy who heads up one of the largest institutions for education of young folks. So it's people that are going straight from school into some of these business educations. And he said, all of our educations have been frozen completely. So everybody is at home. This forces us to be using the digital tools that we've been talking about for the last 5 years. And this is a very visionary leader. And I know, because I've been working with him, that in each and every speech that he has given to his team of teachers, he has said to them, we have to be more progressive. We have to work in new ways. And even though he has done so, and he really is advocating this in such a delightful way, the entire organization has not switched around. And we see this over and over again, the pain with digital transformation. It's not fun, because our brains, they're not wired for lots and lots of change. They are super happy with habits, with doing what we did yesterday, with repeating what we know, with going into situations where we feel familiar. So all of this, using new tools, working in new ways, in this case, taking your entire curriculum from analog to digital, that is not fun. But now it's necessary. And now everybody is doing so. And he was just praising and saying, wow, like in 2 months, we have taken a quantum leap. Like we have shifted. We have gone 100% digital. And this is what we need for the future. So I think that there's lots of cases of companies and of educational institutions like this one, of hospitals, of distilleries, of lots of companies and people that are being forced to use this as a great win. And for some it will be, and obviously for others it's super sad to see that they're not making it right now. But we are being trained in the skills of the 2020s, and that I really think we should see as a gift.
Yeah, and it's very inspiring to hear how many people are embracing this opportunity. What I'm in touch with when you talk is that what we're actually capable of when we are forced to. We see that during every crisis, personal crisis, but also crises like the tsunamis or the world wars. I mean, what the human resources that emerged from that was extraordinary. Is always extraordinary, right? And it actually is the human resources that get us through crisis.
Exactly. Yes, it is. And I think as humans, we are way more flexible than what we realize. Like, we can go through change, but we won't until we're forced. So now we are being forced, and I really think that, and I really hope that people will take the lessons learned, whatever they might be in any specific case, and really put them to use within the coming years, because we are capable of living in a completely digitized world, and we are capable of coming out of a crisis like this and restarting and rebooting the economy again in new ways. So
yeah. It could actually be a fiesta. I'm actually envisioning, there could be like so much innovation happening in here, and so many people stepping forward, and so many initiatives that actually, when we come out on the other side, it could be one big party of, wow, innovation here, creativity there, initiative there, wow, learning there. It could be.
Exactly. I really, really think that we will see so many things that would have otherwise never happened, because obviously, as a company, you're put into the world to make money and to be using your market. So lots of companies, they're doing just that, and they focus on just that. So now that that activity has been stopped, they have been forced to stop and to look inside of their organization and see, what are the resources that we have? What is the capability of radical creativity? How can we solve or being at least a brick in the puzzle of solving a part of this huge crisis? And what can we bring to market that was not what we intended when we started our 2020 vision? And that, I think that we will see so many cases of in the coming months that would otherwise not have been here.
Yeah, because we would go on with what we know and what we were thinking and our plans. I mean, I even experienced this. You had a plan, it was going well, and then suddenly, not only the rules of the game changed, but the whole game changed.
Exactly.
That was like I was teaching people how the rules of the game have changed, but then I also had to pivot when the game itself was a new one.
Completely. Yeah, entirely. I think that lots of us, we had this, or at least I had a talk with my partner just the other day, and in the beginning of the year, we were like, 2020, yes, this will be one of the best years ever, and we have lots of plans made. Now, a little bit into April, we were just laughing so hard the other day, like, okay, so everything we planned, we have now put on hold, and we are engaging in completely new arrays, and we might pick it up on the other side of the summer holidays, but also, of course, forcing ourselves to really be using this time specifically on how we can build our strengths. So we will come stronger out of this, definitely, in any given way. There will be systems that will collapse and companies that will not make it through, but it will also be an opportunity to see new ways of growth and entire new business areas getting started up.
So let's look at for a moment at the people and the companies that you think will have a more difficult time. What do you think? Is there anything they have in common? The sectors or the people or the companies? What can we say about them? Do you see any common megatrends there?
Well, I haven't been looking too much into the companies that have not made it so far. Obviously, we hear, sadly, that some of the restaurants, they're closing down right now. Some of the ones that have invested heavily and that has been very dependent on the cash flow and the liquidity of this year. Some of them, they are now not here anymore. And I had a chat with a good friend of mine just yesterday who is investing and building. He's one of the more progressive city developers in Denmark. And he said that this crisis is like everything in life, that you can lean forward and you can lean backward, but not so much that you can't keep the balance. And I think for the companies that are not making it right now, I think maybe they hadn't got that core balance, that core strength, so that they could actually be using their resources to take this pivot and to be using their human resources on one hand side, and obviously all of their know-how or their facilities, production facilities, or whatever is their USP, to be refitting that into the context right now. And I think for the companies and for the people that are making it right now, there is a core of optimism in this. People, they want to figure out not if they can make it, but how they can make it. So I think they are also reframing their own game rules. Like, they're looking into the world and they're not accepting that they cannot have a place in this world. So how can we gear to stay relevant? And I really think, because obviously one of my big things is neuroscience. And so when I've been looking into the capabilities of the brain and of our mindset and of our ways of thinking, and what propels our mindset of innovation and creativity ahead, it's all about optimism. Like, there's a study from Harvard University that elaborates that when you can see on a brain scan that your brain is happy, then we have way more activity in the left part of our frontal lobe. Then you have an innovation capability that is 300% larger. 300% larger. And your brain, on like during a normal week, it will have 4 different gears that it will go in and out of. So it will be happy, it will be stressed, it will be negative, or it will be neutral. So when you can shift your brain into being happy, and we can actually do this just by activating our thoughts of gratitude and of hope and of thankfulness and for whatever we're happy for this day. When we ignite those thoughts, we also ignite the neural pathways that are responsible for this way of thinking within our brains. So we're 300% more innovative when we're happy. We're less stressed, we're more productive. Work is just flowing in an easier manner. And we're obviously more resilient. So whatever we can do to force ourselves to be also seeing the good sides, the upsides, the opportunities in a crisis like this, and to be reflecting upon what is the normal that we want to come back to. Now, we had a normal just when we started 2020, everything was normal. We're just running on our normal path. Now this normal path has been completely broken up, and I think that is a gift for us to be looking back and seeing what was actually normal back there, and what is the new path that we want to be cementing. What are the new ways of working, thinking, living, doing, innovating, creating, and that we want to ensure that we put our energy into for the coming years. And I think that in itself is a gift, that pause. And if we then, in this pause where it kind of feels like Thelma and Louise, and we've just gone off the cliff and we're sitting there in the car and we can't see when the road is actually going to catch us again. There was no road in that movie, but there will be in this world that we're a part of. If we're willing to reflect upon what that road is, how we want to create it, where we're going, then I really think that we can use this time up in the air for something very, very precious.
Well, I really agree with you, because if we look at what was normal,
yeah,
and we combine that with the neuroscience you're talking about, then normal was not very healthy, because normal was being stressed, normal was being depressed, normal was being so-so. And so many people, I mean, was it 70% of people were not engaged at work? So we had a very low level of happiness in our daily life. If you look at the average, I mean, most people on the planet were actually suffering. So that's not so good for innovation. So if you want to ignite the global creativity, the human resources, then we should make a shift into our mind, of our mindsets and our habits, so that happiness is our main goal, because that will save the rest. Would that make sense?
Exactly. Yeah, I totally think that is resonating. And I really think that the more that we insist that this is an opportunity, the more we will actually be capable of using this as an opportunity. And here I think it's up to every single one of us to look inwards, to look into our own personal context. What is the gift in all of this? And how can I use this time to become a more resourceful and resilient person in whichever ways that you have the opportunity to do so? It may be that you'll find some new bonds with your family when you're back home. It may be that you have more time on your hands where you can start to learn something new, where you can lift your skills and your competencies so that when the job market really opens again, you'll be one of the top picks. It may be that you have a company that you have pivoted, where you have learned new ways of collaborating or found a new business area like we did in our distillery. And when we're talking about it, we, like in the beginning, we're laughing and saying, haha, yeah, of course, let's jump into this and reframe everything that we're doing and start to produce sanitizers instead of premium alcohol. And our master distiller team, they had a good time with it, joking with it. And now obviously everybody's on board, and we see it as a big opportunity both to be producing a product that is necessarily and producing or starting up a new business line, using it also commercially. And I think the more that we can find kind of the Venn diagram that overlaps between what is really relevant, what is something that the world needs, and what is a resource that we have and own to bring that out, the more that we can do that, the more 2020 proof we will have made ourselves within this crisis. So I really think we have to be using all of our force to be insisting on the good things that will also come out, so we can all take this quantum leap that you have framed that this crisis is also about.
Or could be, if we use it correctly. Yeah. And there I really want to emphasize something you said a little bit earlier. You talked about what can we learn from this crisis, and I think that the people and the companies who it's mostly companies who feel that they fail, they have to lay off people, they might have to close, etc., etc. I think it's important, in alignment with the optimistic mindset, to not see that as failure, because that's also an old-fashioned way of seeing it, because it's just evolution. And so if we adopt like the learning mindset, that's just, we just learned, it's feedback. We learned something doesn't work anymore, something is obsolete, something that autopilot didn't work anymore. The fear-based paradigm was not so constructive in an era of constant change.
Exactly.
Then we will be more. It will be easier for us to switch over to the mindset of the 21st century. That it has to be. That's the era of unprecedented change. So we can't sit there with our, and be afraid of change, because that's the new norm.
Exactly. Like in one interview I did with Maurice Conti, who has both been with Autodesk and has been heading up the first moonshot factory in Europe. He said, if you haven't learned something significantly new for a month, you're screwed. And he said, no, you shouldn't quote me for that. You should say, you should be worried. And so I promised him that I would. And the more that I've been thinking about this, I really think that he had the nail right on, because we have to be seeing new things, learning new things. We are in this, just as you said, this new world where everything is changing, and that is the only constant. So how might this also change us if we're in the unlucky situation that we have been laid off? What job will you be finding? that suits you even better afterwards? What have you been dreaming about doing? What can you do with the time that you all of a sudden have on your hands that you can be spending in new ways? And I love the study that you were just referring before, Gallup's engagement study, because they're kind of monitoring every year what is the global engagement index. And they're seeing this year after year after year that it's 87% that is one way or the other not motivated in their job.
87? Did you say 87? I thought it was 70 and I thought that was big. I thought that was a high number.
I know.
Oh, it was 87. Oh, I'm sorry.
And of the 87%, there's 24% that is actively disengaged. So that means the people that will show up in the morning and really not take part of whatever is going on. And I think that's horrible. Obviously, it's horrible for the companies that have these employees that really don't want to be there, but it's even more horrible for whomever is showing up at work in the morning, disliking everything about the situation, not wanting to be there. So how might we focus even more on the 13% that really loves what they're doing, that want to bring it into the world, that would be doing this no matter if they were paid or not? What are these kinds of jobs, and how can people that might have been laid off, how can they use this as an opportunity to find a job that fits them and suits them even better? Where can they search? What can they do? How might they upgrade their skills to be learning new things and to get their motivation back, or start a business on their own? Or there's really, whenever a system is shaken like our global system is right now, we have to cement new infrastructures afterwards. And I think if you just take that into your own world has been shaken sufficiently. How might that change you? What are the new ways that you'll be cementing? And how might you be upskilling, upgrading yourself, learning new things, and building this growth mindset, as it is called in neuroscience and positive psychology, when you talk about people that insist on things can change, and things can change for the better. So I think if we can cultivate that, and if we can really hold that to heart, this growth mindset, then we will come out on the other side and we will have grown.
Yeah, and I think you're right about that, but I think that there's a step before that, because I think it's quite easy for us who sit here in the West and, we haven't lost something significant. The two of us haven't, at least. We have had other losses. My goddess, I have lost a child in my life. So, I've had my share of losses. I've had many losses like that, but I just feel a lot of empathy for the people who are like, I know how it is to be, when you're facing loss, when you're in the middle of it, it's really hard to find the optimism and the resources. And that's where I think we can help each other. Yeah. Because the ones of us who have been there can help the others over the bridge. Because the truth of the matter is that if you are disengaged, and if you are at loss for purpose, and if you are at loss for optimism, that's where you need it the most. And so I think that our educational system could be a little bit smarter at teaching kids from the start, how do you pick yourself up? How do you choose optimism? What are the resources you have at hand? How do you balance these resources? What can you use for what? And also be better at helping young people finding purpose, true purpose, because a lot of young people and a lot of people in general are lost for purpose.
Yeah.
Completely lost. I mean, the WHO, they say that depression is actually, it's so widespread that it's a global threat. Depression. Because people don't find meaning and purpose, and where is it all going to lead? So I think that's also a place where we can get better in the educational systems and even in our university system. Why don't we teach people inner MBA, inner skills, inner leadership? because that's what's required in order to create the extraordinary results on the outside. So, I mean, it's not logic. That's part of the old that didn't work. You just expected people to show up and perform, but you didn't even consider what is the real motivation other than status, money, things that young people are not even turned on by anymore, because if they choose that lifestyle, we'll destroy ourselves. So what's the point?
Exactly. I think just like with your work that I really admire, we have to be focusing way more on the inner world, on the resources, and on how to be building and cultivating our own resources in a way better way. And to be just learning about the biology and physiology that can keep us sane in these times, and that will lift in our worldview. Like, just to mention a couple of the really hands-on tools that might be for some of the listeners interesting within this. When we talk about optimism and we talk about our happiness, that is something that we can cultivate extremely easily. From NeuroScience, there is an entire field called Neuroplasticity, where researchers are looking at how your brain is changing according to how you're using it. And we can see with, for instance, taxi drivers in London, when they have been ridden over there for many, many years, and even if you just want their certificate, you have to be able to navigate the streets of London without a GPS. So that is 25,000 streets and roads that you yourself have to be able to navigate. And this is, of course, a huge stressor on the brain. So they have to train themselves to be able to do that. And when they've done so, their hippocampus, the area for long-term memory and for learning, has grown to be larger than for those of us who have not given ourselves this challenge. And we also see it with monks that have been meditating for many, many years. The outer gray matter of the brain with them is thicker than for most of us who have not been meditating for maybe 20 or 30 years. Maybe you have, but for others of us, it's not the same. So this is just a proof that our brains changes with what we use it for. It's that simple. So in these times, one of the simplest, but one of the tools that these neuroscientists, they keep flagging is whatever you do, just jot down 1 or 2 or 3 things that you're grateful for every single day. Because that is the easiest way to be building out this infrastructure in your brain that is responsible for your optimism and for your happiness. So the more that you do this, the more that every single day that you put into exercising this particular habit, the stronger your brain's capability of insisting on the good, on the optimistic view, on whatever you'll be grateful for in a situation, the stronger the capability will become physically and neurologically. And then also on the other hand side, something that we should all be thinking about in these times is our movement. Like, we are creatures of biology, so our bodies and our brain is hugely interwoven. So in these days, when we're working from home, our exercise is crucial. John B. Rady, who's one of the researchers within this field, he has seen that just when we're standing up, as opposed to when we're sitting down, we're activating 7% more of our brains. We know from Stanford University that when we're walking, we are 60% more creative than when we're seated, just by walking. And this is due to the fact that obviously when the heart starts to beat, it starts to send more blood throughout the entire system, so it physically activates way more of the brain. And the more that you have of your availability in your brain, the more you can use it for creative thinking and for solving problems and for thinking about the future, which is hugely complex for us already. So kind of building in new routines now that all of the routines have already exploded in these weeks, that can be something that can help us for the future. And from a neurological standpoint, exercise is when your heart is beating from 65% of our maximum heart rate and up. So from 65 to 100, there you're really reaping the neurological benefits of exercise. So that is creativity. It's an ability to be learning faster. Like there's a window of 90 minutes after you've been exercising where you'll learn 20% faster due to a growth hormone released in the body during exercise called brain-deprived neurotrophic factor, or BDNF. But BDNF is also availability for the synapses that you are welting together after your exercise. So whatever thought that you're thinking after you've been exercises in this window of 90 minutes will be stronger than if it hadn't been after exercise. So whatever new thing we have to learn or engage in, we can reap the benefits here. And then obviously for our mood, when we have to stay strong and stay optimistic, then 3 spots of exercise of 45 minutes during a week that has the same impact on the level of neurotransmitters that we produce, serotonin and dopamine, like antidepressants. So it's really a good opportunity to be using these new daily routines to getting some more exercise in, and to ensuring that we keep journaling and we keep our focus on where the good things in all of this are.
Wow. And when you talk about that, it's just, one more thing from the old that does not work. We sit all day. We have all meetings around a table with coffee instead of fresh air. I mean, there's so many of the old routines that are just plain not intelligent.
Exactly.
And not intelligent, considering what we know about our physiology now.
Exactly.
So it is a very, very precious gift that we get this opportunity to change them.
Exactly. I think we should see this as kind of a loophole that we really have the opportunity now to be looking curiously at all of the new ways of working and creating our daily routines. What is it that we want to bring forth? What is the new normal that we want to come back to? And how does this road looks ahead of us that we will be paving when the car is once again hitting the road, and we pick up speed and we go into our new habits, because the new habits, they will also be there. So right now we have this beautiful window, this pause button, where we can be looking at everything from a new angle, and hopefully making the paving of our next roads that we hit even better, and that can allow us to go faster.
Yeah, because we have only 10 years to reach the 17 world goals. And also technology is going fast. So if we want to keep up with technology, we have to upgrade our human system. Don't you agree? I mean, you're an expert on this.
I totally agree. And I talk a lot with companies about transformational learning. What are the skills that they need to build in, like kind of understanding the world from this angle, that so much new technology, so many new business models, and so many new ways of doing business that will be disruptive in the coming years will hit everybody. So you kind of have to figure out as a business, what are the areas that you should be curious about? What are the areas that you should start to build some knowledge within, and which areas do you need to build your competencies within? And when you kind of understand this, then you should start to build for transformational learning. How can you build in a knowledge set, and how can you hire for these particular areas of knowledge that you see will be the foundation for your company making money in the future and still being relevant? And so we all have to go through this if we in any way are touching the digital arena, which most of us are. So right now we have been forced to be adopting lots of these new tools that is kind of mirroring the ways that we will be working within the 20s. And exactly as you're mentioning, we have these 10 years to be moving far. So this is really just a kickstart of starting to use the tools that will get us further and more efficient and more productive and in new digital founded ways.
So in that sense, you can say that the Corona crisis is a gift in the sense that we now have the opportunity to reboot our human systems so that they are in alignment with the needs of the coming years.
I think so. I think if we were standing in 2030 right now and not looking into the financial crises that the coronavirus is also bringing, but if we're looking into the ways of working, I think that we will see a huge momentum, a huge shift in people starting to work in new ways that resemble the ways that the 20s, that the companies that will be the most relevant in the 20s will be working. And I think exactly for that, we should be grateful for this opportunity. We're forced and we have to work in new ways, and we're now given the opportunity to be learning all of these new tools.
How do you keep up yourself? I mean, you are you're somebody that people call when they want to know where we're heading and so on. So how do you keep up with all the news yourself?
Well, I have a couple of different routines. In the morning, I try to take a good walk alongside the 53 snoring kilos that I have laying here in the couch, my dog. So we'll walk for approximately an hour or so in the morning. And within that hour, I have a long list of podcasts that I want to be listening into. So that is all with kind of relevant knowledge. Some of it is tech, others might be philosophy, some might be neuroscience, but this is kind of where I cover the front edge. I have this one curation principle, that is that it has to be inspiring. Like it has to be something where I'm like, wow, what is this? And I can't stop listening to it, and I have to jot down some notes. And if it's not, then I'll flip on to the next one. So we spend approximately an hour in the morning listening to some kind of deep dive, often related within these fields. When I get back home, I have a morning call with my two partners, Susanna and Thomas, that you also know. And if we're not working together that day, we'll be talking about the day, but we will also be discussing, what are you inspired by? What did you just read? What was in the news today? And I really think having some people that you talk over significant changes or radical new ideas or something that you learned or heard, that is kind of a sanity check for you, because sometimes you'll hear something and the others with different backgrounds. Thomas, for instance, he has a PhD in artificial intelligence. So he's also a techie. So he has a different angle that is way more based on data science than I do. So we have some different perspectives. And Susanna, she's a gifted strategizer. So she will have some different perspectives again. So I think setting up some people that you regularly talk about what you heard, saw, read about, which conversation or interview that you did, that is a way to constantly evolve your thinking, to give it new perspectives and to give it legs. And then I try to reach out to people that I inspire, that I'm inspired by and that I admire, and say, would you mind sharing your perspective on this? Or I would love to do an interview with you on this. And listen in on kind of what have they been doing and how are they thinking about these different things. And then I have books everywhere. Like I have literally, I think 20 books by my bed right now that I'm shuffling in and out of, that all have a science side to it and kind of a more abstract or philosophical side of it. So I read a lot. I have some of my favorite channels to stay updated within tech is MIT Technology Review. They are great because they're really pushing the boundaries, and you'll always find an article about something where you go like, what? How is that even possible? Can we do this now? And I think the principle here is to ensure that every single week you should at least say, wow, once. It's better if you do it once a day, but at least every single week. You should have read something. You should have seen something where you go, I did not think this was possible. How can this be? And if you haven't found that, it's because you haven't looked hard enough. So you should really be on the outlooks for these new things. So I think breaking your own mind of what you thought was possible at least once a week, that is one of my working principles, because then you are staying on the edge, always seeing, looking towards all these new things, and you gear yourself for this plasticity that you have to have in a society like the ones that we're approaching in the 20s, where everything will feel new. So many new companies and startups, they will reframe the game once again by introducing technologies and concepts that we hardly thought was possible. So this is really something that will feed our own imagination and that will help us break the barriers within our companies, because it's so easy to sit in a company or in a context and say, we can't do this, and we've already tried and we've done the research, so let's continue in the way that we have been doing whatever we're doing. It's so easy, and it's what our brains, they want us to think, because that is the right and energy saving solution. But there are always new ways if we just keep looking. So we should really stay on the outlook for anything that can break and bend our mindset. And then we should be using that as a ramjet for our inspiration to ensure that anything you want to make happen, you almost can make happen, like truly. So look towards the edges and bring that back into your everyday, and talk with your peers, and be curious to talk with people that are different than you in age and gender and background, and be sure to stay provoked. Like, figure out, why do you disagree with whomever you're discussing something with? What is it in their background and their way of viewing the world that is unlike your own worldview? And from that, we can learn so much.
I really want to thank you, Louise, because every conversation I have with you is a learning conversation. It's a conversation where I am inspired and I learn new perspectives, and you have such heart. That's also, it's easy for you to teach because you do it with so much heart. I remember an image, we were together we spent one day together, and the image that came out of it was like you were somebody who talks in such a manner that all the little flowers inside of us start to blossom. So I really want to thank you for that, for giving hope and for giving perspective and for giving a purpose with this crisis, to help us see that this could actually be a great, great thing for humanity. Let's do it.
Exactly. And thanks to you for facilitating this and for bringing out all of the amazing questions that you hold and that you have. It's really a gift. And I'm excited to be listening into the other great thinkers that you have on board.
Thank you so much. So have a wonderful day, and let's create a great future.
Yes, let's. Great.
Thank you so much for watching, and thank you for enlightening us with your perspective by leaving a comment on the blog. And while you're at it, don't forget to subscribe to my newsletter so I can keep you posted on 21st century leadership trends, tips and best practices, plus give you access to more interviews with thought leaders, innovators and other inspiring pioneers. Let's also connect on social media so we can interact, dialogue and gather a big enough community of luminary leaders to make a world-changing difference and co-create a bright future for all. Thank you again for watching, and hopefully keep in touch.